Hi, everyone. Welcome to Café IBTTA. I'm Pat Jones. My guest today is Tom Smith, the Executive Director of the American Society of Civil Engineers. A dedicated member of ASCE for more than 25 years and a civil engineer by training, Tom has served as the association's Deputy Executive Director and General Counsel before becoming the Executive Director and Secretary in January 2015. Tom also serves as a director on the board of the ASCE Foundation. Responsible for the day-to-day management of the society, Tom leads a staff of 250 and an active volunteer workforce of over 7,500 people, facilitating ASCE's tradition of providing high-quality products and services to more than 150,000 members in 177 countries, in all civil engineering disciplines and at all points of their career paths. Tom, welcome to Café IBTTA. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Pat. It's great to be here. Hi, everybody.
Well, this is Café IBTTA, where we drink coffee or your other favorite beverage, and we talk about things that are interesting, relevant, uplifting, and fun. And as we get started, I have a big shout out to a member of our staff. Angela Brady is IBTTA's Director of Membership and Business Development. She's been involved in IBTTA for almost 2 years. She's responsible for recruiting and onboarding new members, promoting the new digital advertising program, planning and supporting the membership and international committees, managing the new mentoring program, designing enhanced member benefits, and responding to member questions and requests. Angela, thanks for all you do. And speaking of membership, this is membership renewal time. We sent the membership renewal packets in late October, so you should have received yours by now. If you have any questions, please contact Terry Langford. Also, there is a membership renewal page on our website featuring videos by our current and incoming presidents, Samuel Johnson and Mark Compton. There are also a bunch of testimonials from other IBTTA members. So please support IBTTA by renewing your membership today. And while I'm thinking of it, today is the day before Thanksgiving here in the United States. And I'd like to say thank you to you, all the members of IBTTA, our board of directors and executive committee, all of the committees, councils, task forces, working groups that serve IBTTA throughout the year, and of course, my colleagues on the IBTTA staff. We're all extremely grateful to you, the members, and the great support and the great work that you do throughout the year. So thank you to you at this Thanksgiving time. Well, we are taking your questions. Use the chat function and select all panelists and attendees. And we want to get you started right away. So in the chat function, type one word or phrase that describes your feelings about civil engineering, all right? Now, keep in mind, Tom's here, all right? One word or phrase that describes your feelings about civil engineering. Way over my head. Professional, needed. What else do we have here? Totally necessary, innovative, variety, core, introverts. Oh, we could talk about that, huh, Tom?
Absolutely.
Infrastructure, my livelihood, important, underrated, great vocation. Yeah, civil society. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, I've heard that joke about the difference between an introvert and an extrovert engineer, right? How does that line go, Tom?
Yeah, I think what is it? I think the extrovert will look at the other person's shoes.
When they're talking to you, right? The introvert
exactly.
looks at his own shoes. All right. Well, while we're watching these responses come up, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about them in the chat, I have to show this new slide. Okay, so you know, this might be the only opportunity I have in my life to show a slide like this. Alias Smith and Jones was a Western that aired on ABC television in the early 1970s, and it was set in the Wyoming territory in the late 1860s and 70s. And these two guys were supposedly the most successful outlaws in the history of the West. So here you have Tom Smith and Pat Jones, alias Smith and Jones. I don't think we're outlaws, but let's just say we're the most successful association executives in the history of transportation. How about that, Tom?
I love this. I'm honored to be on a poster with you, Pat. This is wonderful.
All right. Well, let's get into our questions. So, Tom, ASCE is doing some amazing things, and we're going to talk about that a little later, something like your future world vision and your movie making career. But I'd like to start close to home. And so ASCE has a headquarters in Northern Virginia. And recently you discovered, hey, we gotta fix our parking lot. We gotta repave this thing. But thinking like a good engineer about resilience and sustainability, you said, hey, we're not just going to roll out 5 acres worth of asphalt here. We're going to do something sustainable. So tell us about that, your close to home project.
Thank you, Pat. Yes, well stated. This is, we're located right on the toll road. You're glad to hear that, in going out to the Dulles Airport in Reston, Virginia. And we moved out there in the 1990s, mid-1990s, and as Pat said, we've got a large parking lot on a 5-acre lot, and it's all asphalt. And it was starting to crumble, and it needed to be replaced, and the immediate reaction was, let's just quickly get it repaved. And then we said, no, we actually think we need to start walking the talk. Here we had just done a low-impact development conference on how do you decrease the quantity of water running, stormwater, how do you increase the quality of the water coming off your site? How can we actually contribute to the health of the Chesapeake Bay from our little site in Reston, Virginia? We got a 6-story office building there. And we said, so let's put in some of the lowest impact development practices that we utilize in our conferences that we teach people, and we did it in our parking lot. And so we put in, stormcrete, it's a modular precast porous concrete slabs. We put in permeable pavements. We put in a biofiltration system, a Filtera system. We also then, when we went to the asphalt, we used crumbled tires. So we have pavement with recycled additives. It's a dry process rubberized asphalt. So that actually takes traditional road paving material, but it includes these crumbled tires, and it can help with safety. It can help with noise reduction. It has some cost savings, and it's also sustainable in terms of using recycled tires. So we're very proud of this. In fact, Pat and I were just talking about this, and I showed him a picture, and he said, well, why don't you show that? And I'll see if I can just do a quick screen share, and I'll just show you.
That would be great.
Yeah,
picture's worth 1,000 words, right?
Yeah. So you can see this about on the picture on the left is about 2 months ago what our parking lot looked like. Taken down. This is, I think we took this down from the picture from the roof of the building, and you can see that light pole on the left that's circled, and then you see on the right it's what it looks like. That's what it looked like about 2 weeks ago. Those pylons are gone, and the asphalt has now been added surrounding this area. But you can see where we circled that light pole on the right. So it's got, this was done, by the way, with an enormous amount of volunteer effort. And we also used, ASC publishes a variety of different standards. And we actually have ASC 68, which is a -18, which is a permeable interlocking concrete pavement standard. So we did this in accordance with the standard that we put out there. So we're making sure that we're walking the talk. We're now doing testing. We want to make sure that we can kind of demonstrate the value that it's on the water quality. So yeah, I think this is a good way to kind of walk the talk and improve the health of the Chesapeake Bay. And if we all do this, we can have an impact on climate change and you name it. So we're very proud of doing this and just finished this project, as I said, just within the last, fully completed it within the last 2 weeks.
So Tom, you're not just running a world headquarters out there in Reston, Virginia, you're actually saving the Chesapeake Bay, right?
That's right. We're trying to do our part. I mean, like I said, it's hard to believe, but it's really fascinating because we work with volunteers like you do all the time. And here we have to really see them in action. They're floating a drone and helping us with the site plan. They're donating concrete, and we had another donations of materials. There was just an enormous amount of work, designing a bioretention facility. And then we had a lot of donors contribute, so that the pavers are engraved with people's names on them. So that was another way of raising funds.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, one of the things my members perhaps know ASCE most for is the quadrennial report card that you guys do. And the last one you did was in 2017. So we have another one coming up in 2021. And tell us a little bit more about that report. How do you do it? Why do you do it? And what kind of influence does it have on the body politic?
Yeah, thank you, Pat. We've been doing that report card since 1998. And we realized that we have increasing concerns as a developed country about the state of our nation's infrastructure. We've got a lot of our infrastructure that was designed and built a generation ago, and is nearing the end of its useful life. Some of it past the end of its useful life, and is being continued to stretch beyond. Sorry, that's my dog in the background. Wonderful.
We often have guests like that on this show.
Exactly. I figured. And so, so we wanted to make sure that we felt like we had an obligation. So you might say, some people say, well, do you have a self-interest? Well, we also have an obligation. If we're not speaking out about the condition of our nation's infrastructure, then who would do that? The people that help to design it, build it, operate it, and maintain it. So we've been doing that we put together a team of experts, about 30 different experts. We break it down. We infrastructure into 16 different categories, but we've actually added this year in 2021, we're adding a stormwater as a category for infrastructure. And then we just try to keep it very simple, assign a grade, just like a report card like we're all used to seeing. The cumulative grade has been a D+ last time, and we're getting ready to roll out the one on March 3rd. We'll roll out the 2021 report card. And we also, obviously, we identify issues, we identify funding needs, and we identify solutions to this problem, because we want to make sure that we're promoting sustainable, resilient, safe, innovative infrastructure, using new materials, considering new issues like climate change, and not just doing things the way we did them before. So it's an opportunity for us. It's gotten a lot of traction over the years. I remember President Obama, quoting it in his State of the Union address. Right. Members of Congress do it all the time. I remember Amy Klobuchar citing it. Members of Congress do that frequently. I think we also do state report cards. And I think the Puerto Rico report card is still on President-elect Biden's website. It's a real opportunity now, of course, with the new administration. We've had, each administration has spoken a lot about infrastructure, but it's been hard to sort of get it over the finish line with really a comprehensive, sustainable investment in infrastructure. So we're optimistic. Now, this time, in conjunction with this, we're also doing something called a failure to act study, which is where we've got economists looking at what is the cost when we fail to invest in our nation's infrastructure. So that's also something we're very focused on, is showing people the hidden tax that we all pay when we don't invest in infrastructure. And so we've rolled out a couple of different elements of that failure to act study. We did one on electricity. We did one on water. We have one on transportation. We did a preliminary one on transportation, but that's going to be rolled out over the next month. And then a comprehensive roll-up of all of them over the next 2 months. So as the new administration comes in, we've got failure to act studies coming out. We've got a report card coming out. So there'll be a lot happening.
You're busy. You got a lot going on there. And
yeah.
We really appreciate it, because it's something that we can use as well to sort of justify a relaxed attitude toward tolling and other alternative forms of funding and financing of road infrastructure. We are taking your questions. We invite you to write your questions in the chat function and select all panelists and attendees. So please send us your questions. And we do have a question already from Steve Morello, and he asks about, what is the ASCE, what's the civil engineering perspective on managing fuel tax declines, in the face of the popularity of electric vehicles and given the need for massive investment in infrastructure? How do you see that, Tom?
Yeah, that is a big challenge. The motor fuel tax has not risen since 1993, so it's less than 19 cents a gallon. I think it's 18.4 cents a gallon, and it hasn't changed since then. Obviously, the buying power alone since 1993, if you look at what you were paid back at that time,
Right.
and inflation has a major impact on it. But then, yes, moving to electric vehicles, more fuel-efficient vehicles, so the fuel tax is not going to go as far. We continue to advocate for an increase in the fuel tax. Many states have increased their fuel taxes, and we, by the way, do a state report card, and that has some impact there too. We've got, I think we maybe have 40 different state report cards, and we've watched, I think, over 30 states over the last 10 years or so increase their state gas taxes. And that's positive because it's brought more money that can be utilized for transportation infrastructure. And we think that the Highway Trust Fund needs more money, a sustained funding source. But it's a very good point about what about long term? User fees are going to be more important. Vehicle miles traveled, and making sure that we can track that as opposed to just a fuel tax. In the near term, the fuel tax, I think, is a good solution. It's the quickest, easiest solution. I say easiest, but try getting it through when it's deemed to be a tax. Obviously, user fees are critical, and we advocate a lot on public-private partnerships and making sure we're looking at all the tools in the toolbox.
So there are big challenges confronting civil engineers. We have a group within IBTTA that's just starting to stand up to more actively engage engineers in the work of IBTTA. And a question I got from the folks who lead that, Carrie Witt of HNTB and John Keller with the New Jersey Turnpike, they asked, what are the biggest challenges engineers face when addressing today's aging infrastructure needs?
Yeah, gosh, where do you start? I mean, obviously, one of the big challenges is of course, is funding. Making sure that we have the adequate funds and looking at the life cycle of our infrastructure, not just going for the lowest upfront cost so that we can cut a ribbon, but making sure that we're looking over the life cycle. And some of the life cycles are, you're going out, you're planning projects that are going to go out for 100 years. Right. And so you really have to think about what are the maintenance costs and how are you going to pay for that over time. Obviously, innovation is a challenge. The litigious environment that we're in and stifling you want to try something new, but obviously safety is a first and foremost concern. And being efficient and protecting the environment and being concerned about things like climate change. And so we've got a lot of new considerations that people weren't really thinking about, back, 50, 75, 100 years ago. And so we have to think a little bit differently. So there are a lot of challenges. These are all, of course, great opportunities for us. These are things that we can do to protect, enable the next generation, instead of just relying on work that was done by a past generation. But our own standards at ASCE, we're trying to make sure that we're also enabling innovation. So that's a challenge. If we have standards that are too prescriptive and they say, here's how you do this, and you have to follow the standards so you can be within the standard of care and not get subject to liability and still get insurance coverage, et cetera. Well, we want to be more performance-based with our standards so that we can allow innovation. So that's another challenge.
Sometimes it's hard to get a message through to people simply by using logic and arguments. The words on a page, they can lose their value over time. In this age of social media, and Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, it's like words. Where do we go with this? And sometimes you need to reach people on a visceral level. And I think about one of the first times I went to the Air and Space Museum, and I bought a ticket to go into that IMAX theater, and I saw that movie To Fly, and I mean, it was breathtaking. I remember, there was a scene where there was a guy in a balloon, in one of those hot air balloons, and you see scenes from the ground, and then you see scenes from in the balloon, and then all of a sudden, he's going over this body of water, and you realize he's going over the edge of the Niagara Falls. I mean, I almost tossed my cookies just looking at that movie. And you guys have gotten into the movie business, right? You've got a project called Dream Big, which is all about engineers and what they do, and it's an IMAX movie. Tell us about that project and what motivated that, and what effect it's had?
Absolutely. It's funny that you mentioned To Fly, because, for people in my generation, we all saw it, but that I think that's still showing. That's been the longest showing IMAX film. And
Right.
the maker of that film is a company called McGilvery-Freeman. That's the same company we use to create our IMAX film. It's called Dream Big. So we released that in 2017. You can go on Dream Big. You can just Google Dream Big, and you can. There's a whole website, and it's a 42-minute video. You can all watch it on Netflix. And if you go to the website, you can also download educational materials that go with it. We did this film because we realized, and I love all these comments that were made about civil engineering, and I appreciate them. Thank you all for that. And we realized that a lot of times what we do at ASC is we talk to ourselves, about how important civil engineering is. And we said, we really need to make sure we're talking to the rest of the public out there. And by the way, we need to really reach kids. And we need to really help to promote the wonders of civil engineering and engineering in general to a diverse audience, to attract more diversity into the profession. So we put together a team. We did an enormous amount of fundraising. It was a huge project, and we pulled it off. We released this film at the Smithsonian in 2017. It's played in theaters all over the world. It's reached over 2 million people. If you go on the website, you'll see some webisodes as well that go into more detail on topics like autonomous vehicles and desalination. And so you can get more detail. And you can also download lesson plans. So we ended up mailing this out to every single public school in the country, a DVD with the film as well as the lesson plans, as well as there's 50 different hands-on activities you can use for scout troops and in your classrooms. This is at middle school, elementary school, high school even, to get people excited about civil engineering. And it tells kind of emotional stories about engineering. One of them deals with a bridge project, one's with a solar car race, one's with a robotics competition. And as I said, you can watch it on Netflix. So for those of you who are stuck at home with your kids looking for something to get them excited and engaged, have them watch this film. And then you can let them see maybe some of the webisodes and use some of the activities. And maybe you can recommend it also to your teachers in school or scout troops and things of that nature. And and I'm happy to put you in touch with some folks on our staff if you have any more interest in information about it.
Tom, go back to that point about sending the DVD and materials to all the public schools in America.
Yeah.
How many is that? And what was that scale like?
That's about 100,000, and we did a lot of fundraising for that too. In fact, we had a program, a website set up so you could donate. You'd pay, I don't know, it was $5 or $10. It really wasn't a lot to have it mailed to your alma mater. So you could have it to your elementary and high school. And
Right.
A lot of our members were doing that because everybody wanted to have it sent to them, with their name on it. So that was very successful. Again, a very big project. And we're very grateful for a lot of the folks who helped, volunteers, but also funders. The Bechtel Corporation and the Bechtel Foundation were premier sponsors for this whole project and really made it happen. We were also thankful to have, we had Jeff Bridges did the narration and I joke about that because we didn't pick him just for his last name. We thought he'd be terrific to do this, and he did the narration for the film.
He's got a great voice.
He does.
I've seen the film. He's got a wonderful voice for that. Well, here's a question from Midria Clark, who one of our members, and she is one of the members of our task force on diversity, social, and racial inclusion. And she leads a group. She's leading a book club right now on the book How to Be an Anti-Racist. And her question is, what is ASCE doing to increase diversity and inclusion in the civil engineering industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a big challenge when you look at the numbers within engineering in general and civil engineering as well. We have a committee called the Members of Society Advancing an Inclusive Culture that is hard at work on. Right now, they're working on they do a lot of training, by the way. They've done webinars, they do panel discussions. They're working on a best practices guide right now that's going to be released over the next several months. They're doing we're working on we just got a grant from the United Engineering Foundation to do a diversity video. We're trying to track our numbers. We're trying to make sure that we're putting people in positions that are diverse, that in leadership roles. We evaluate, what are the statistics within the bachelor's degrees that are awarded, the master's degrees that are awarded. What does it look like in the civil engineering profession? What does it look like within ASCE? What does it look like on ASCE staff? So I'm trying to make sure that the leadership team that I have in place, I mean, we have, just if you look at just the gender diversity on the ASC staff, we're probably, we do a better job in associations than we do in the profession. We're over 60% female. And if you look on our leadership team, I think we're over 60% there as well. So how do we now, you try to, again, walk the talk with the people that you have in leadership roles on your staff team and the people that you have in leadership roles in your volunteer network, opportunities on your board. But again, it is a challenge because it's a long-standing issue. Our numbers are not very good. Within ASC in the profession, I want to say it's maybe 15% women. But if you look at some of the bachelor's degrees that are coming through, there's a much higher percentage. So I think the future is bright, and in our younger membership ranks, we've got much more diversity. African American, Latino, we have more diversity at those ranks. So I think the future's bright, but it takes a real concerted effort and a lot of training and a lot of focus in making sure that the people that we're nominating for awards, the people that we're moving into distinguished member, we're thinking about diversity. The people that we're putting on our panels to speak, sometimes we've had issues where, somebody said something and it wasn't, it could have been, much more sensitive in the way that they had said. They hadn't thought it through.
Right.
And so, well, wait a minute, the panel we put together, we made the mistake at the very beginning. We didn't have enough diversity when we started.
Right.
And we also know that we get better results with more diverse groups. And it's also, by the way, looking at all elements of diversity as well. It's national origin, but it's also even the technical disciplines that we have people of technologists and civil engineers and all these different roles that people play on the civil engineering team. So we're trying to look at every element of diversity and have the strongest teams that we can.
Yeah, it's really, I think it's really a question of thinking about it more and being intentional about these things. Yeah. The whole idea that, you've got a panel that's all men or, it's all white men, that's part of the, the thinking process there.
Exactly. It's an awareness and a consciousness and then building a kind of a culture.
We're going back to a more technical question here, and it's kind of complicated. I'm going to see if I can simplify it here. So we're moving to connected and autonomous vehicles. The question has to do with, trucks that are platooning, and what effect does that have on pavement rutting? If you have trucks that are platooning, presumably they're not moving through left and right in the lane as they would if they were driven by human beings. Is that a concern that ASCE is focusing on?
Yes, I'm sure that it is. I couldn't tell you specifically about it. We do a pavements conference every year. In fact, our past president, Kanchipuram Gunalan, who goes by Guna, is an executive at AECOM, and he's sort of an expert on pavements, and he could probably tell you this right off the top of his head. I wish he were here with me. But I can get you information on it, I'm sure. But yes, this is one of the things we look at, the connected and autonomous vehicles. What's the impact? We're doing a lot of planning for that within our Transportation and Development Institute. And by the way, are there standards that are needed in some of these areas, including on pavements? And how do you protect against the rutting that you described? I mean, there are some efficiencies that are added, but then there are some challenges that have to be considered as well. We have lots of folks working. We have committees on each of these areas, and then they, as I said, we do this annual conference on pavements that they come in, make their presentations, and compare best practices and analysis on these things. Absolutely.
Tom, one of the big projects ASCE has going right now is something called Future World Vision. Could you just say a few words about what that is? And very future oriented and trying to plan maybe 50 years out.
Exactly. Yeah. So, when we talk about looking out to the future and investing in infrastructure, we said, what are the key trends that we see facing the planet, facing the profession, facing ASCE? And we had like over 120 different trends we saw facing the profession. We narrowed it down to 6. We were looking at alternative energy, autonomous vehicles, we looked at climate change, we looked at smart cities, we looked at high-tech construction and advanced materials, and then we looked at policy and funding as well. And when we narrowed it down to those, we then said, what are the scenarios we see evolving as a result of these trends? And what do those scenarios look like 10 years out, 25 years out, and 50 years out? And then we said, then what are the cities, what are the different cities we see in that time frame? So we looked at a mega city, a rural city, a floating city, a frozen city, and even went so far as to say an off-planet city. And then we said, so now how do we create one of these cities today so you can experience what that city would be like? So we developed an immersive 4D environment where you can, a virtual reality tool, and you can immerse yourself. We actually rolled out a floating city at our convention in Miami a year ago because there was a real focus on climate change and sea level rise down in Miami. At our convention this past month, we rolled out the mega city, and then the next projects will be to move on to the other 3 cities. And you really experience, you can feel what it's like to be in a mega city right now, and then others can get into that city and share. It's deeply researched. I mean, there's just enormous amount. We've got just dozens and dozens of experts on a variety, on every possible topic. These are not just civil engineers. Evaluating what do we think this city is going to look like in 2070. And then you can go in and immerse yourself in the city, and you can put notes in there so that other people can compare, and you can sort of crowdsource the energy and innovation that goes into it. And it's not a tool to design. It's not a design tool. It's more about creativity and helping you to plan for what that future is going to look like. So we're not just doing things the way we've always done them. It gets us out of our standards and codes and thinking totally differently. And obviously, you can imagine, Pat. We're thinking climate change and innovation and sustainability and resilience, and trying to make sure we're really preparing for the future as the population continues to grow. It goes up by 80 million a year. How are we going to deal with that? With clean water and sanitation and transportation. How are we going to move people in a way that's efficient and cost-effective and environmentally friendly? And how do we better harmonize with nature and sort of not fight with nature? So it's trying to look at all those different elements so we can be really global leaders in planning these future cities and thinking about, and policy and funding is part of that, which I know is also ties into probably what a lot of folks are thinking on, who are listening, is how do we pay for it? And so user fees are certainly a big part of that too.
Tom, what's the web address where people can learn more about this future world vision?
If you just go to www.futureworldvision.org, you can see you can download the reports. There's some videos on there, so you can kind of get a little experience about what it's like on the mega city and the floating city. And there's a pretty detailed report. You can read a lot about the trends that we looked at and the more deeper analysis.
Tom, I'm going to make a couple of announcements before we come back and do the wrap up.
Okay, great.
Next week, our guest on Café IBTTA will be Tyler Milligan. He is managing partner at Milligan Partners, LLC, and the incoming chair of IBTTA's Council of Platinum Sponsors. December 1, important program, Making Your Way to the Top. Industry executives share their stories and perspectives, presented by the Leadership Academy Alumni Association in partnership with the Mentorship Subcommittee, the Young Professionals Council, and the Women in Tolling Council. December 7, Managing Your Career with Intentionality, presented by Marcia Clark, Executive Coach and Independent Consultant, presented by the Women in Tolling Council. Check the IBTTA website for details on all of our programs. Well, Tom, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been an absolute delight. What final words of wisdom do you have before we sign off?
Well, I just want to say to everybody, happy Thanksgiving. Pat, thank you so much for inviting me to this. It's been a pleasure. And I want to wish everybody, by the way, a happy new year. I think we're all anxious to get to 2021. I think it's a promising year ahead. We got a lot of opportunity in front of us, and we look forward to working together with y'all to advance safe, sustainable, innovative, resilient infrastructure.
Awesome. Tom, thanks for being on the program, and thanks to everything that ASCE does and your 150,000 members around the world. IBTTA members, be safe, keep in touch, happy Thanksgiving, and we'll see you down the road. Thanks, Tom. Thanks,
Thanks,
everybody.
everybody. Thank you, Pat. Take care, everyone.